Let's go to Rapala Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing. All right. This is the best game mode I'm doing right now. 90%. I just peeked at your percentage. I'll let you say how good you're doing.
Not well. 65.3%. Yeah, I don't know. Every year progressively I've gotten worse and worse at Rapala. I'm really solid at Drain the Lake. I'm doing okay at Pick'em. Rapala has not been kind to me. I feel like I don't know.
We're
I don't
gonna
even know
turn it
what to
around
say.
this week. We're gonna turn it around
Yeah,
because
we'll
I
see.
took a peek at your team when we were loading up our screens and we
Some
we
similarities.
got a couple to match up. So
Yeah.
let's get into I'm gonna go through my five and then we'll kind of give reasons why. But bucket A through E. In A, I've got Zaldain. In B, I've got Stetson Blaylock. C, I've got Will Davis Jr. D, I've got Bryan Schmitt, and E, I've got Connor Jacob. Give me your five-man bucket.
Yeah, so bucket E or bucket A, excuse me. I got to be real honest here. In my fantasy column, I said that I was picking Jay Shakirat. I lied. It's going to be Lee Livesay in bucket A. I have bought into all the doc talk and all the local flavor potentially playing more than um, not maybe not more than people thought, but I'm just going Lee Livesay. I think he's got a great chance to win this tournament. Bucket B, Stetson Blaylock,
We
like
match.
you.
Yep.
Bucket C, also Will Davis
We
Jr.
match.
Bucket D, Easton Fothergill. I do think he's going to catch it. And I'm not, obviously had a rough start to his Elite Series career.
I asked him last night if he shook it off, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're good, we're fine."
Yeah, I'm not worried about him like shaking that off at all. I think he's going to catch me. I've just got a good feeling. And bucket E, Connor Jacob. I wrote a bold predictions piece before the classic, and my bold prediction was that Connor Jacob was going to defy the odds and win the classic.
Wow, I put him in the magazine. Mark
Yeah,
Hicks
yeah,
called
you
me
sure
and
did.
asked.
Sure did.
Mark
Saw
Hicks
that.
called me and asked, uh, and I gave him like, all right, he gave me a couple categories,
Yep. He does that every year. Yep.
and I was like Connor Jacob was one of my categories.
Yeah.
So
No,
he said I appreciate it because he came up to me immediately at the meeting and was like,
same.
"Hey man," I was like, "Hey man."
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of his just because I've covered him since he was in college and I wrote about it in that story. But I think he is a phenomenal angler. Whether or not he has a great showing or not here, who knows? But I do think he has a career doing this because I think he is very, 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 very talented. So, unlikely prediction, but that's why they're bold predictions.
Yeah,
I don't care if
honestly,
I'm wrong.
Brian Kirchhoff was an unlikely
Yeah,
prediction back in the day
100%.
too. I guess Steve Bowman was probably doing fantasy columns back in the '90s. So,
I mean, eventually it's gonna happen. I don't know that it's gonna happen
yeah,
here,
well,
but
and
like
that's what every single,
statistically speaking, like eventually we're gonna have another like true like underdog win.
just
It's gonna
like
happen.
we statistically could break the all-time classic weight record for win the five fish era. You could break the single day limit weight record and the biggest bass caught in a classic. All three are up for grabs, and anglers have mentioned that this week.
I think the
So
weight
give our
record gets broke on day one. I think we're just gonna shatter it right off the bat.
over 30
Yeah,
on day one.
we're gonna see a 30 to 34 pound bag first day.
So we went Zaldain, Livesay, and Bucket A. I didn't pick Zaldain just because I went with him on the final day of practice. I had scheduled that 2 weeks ago. But when I picked this, you put the most probable anglers in bucket A. Like we do, it's not based on AOY, it's just based on big time game time players and a little bit of how they did last season, a little bit mixed in like that.
Yeah, classic experience. A lot of
Yeah,
things factor in.
Zaldain only at 12%. I think a lot of people, and this is me being completely honest, they see Chris Zaldain and they see Bassmaster Classic and they see unstable human being. They see guy who's going to swing for it and throw the hood of a truck to try to win the classic. And I understand that. I have the same feelings with Jocumsen and Kennedy. They do that in regular elite events, and I don't trust them anymore for fantasy fishing. He spent so much time here.
Yeah,
And it's still relatively unknown. We know Lake Ray Roberts. We fished TTBCs here, but those were almost a decade ago. We fished a classic here, but that was in June and the lake was 5 feet high. This is still a mystery lake and it's still a mystery lake to most of the anglers in the country that fish nationally. It's definitely a mystery lake to our field, which is consistent of half of these guys have never fished in the classic basically, or they're in their first two or three classics, so they don't even have June experience here riding around. Um, I just feel like this local advantage and having the opportunity to be confident in running around. If you only get to fish 6 spots because of the wind, Zaldain's going to pick the right 6 spots he's confident in. He also went and did some stuff other people will probably be doing, and he can catch him doing that too. Like I saw it. I got it here. I saw it. And just to prove it, like I was with him. Like I saw it. So I just I trust that if there's one, because we thought Chris Zaldain was going to win the Knoxville Classics in the past and things like that, Gunnersville, all those different things. If Chris Zaldain is going to win a classic, it's this one or he won't. He won't ever win a classic unless he wins this one. This is the one.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is, and that's not a slight on him at all. It's so hard to win a classic. Greg Hackney's fished now in his 19th classic, and he's still looking for his first. No slight on anglers, but it just feels like there is so much hinging on this that if he doesn't get it done here, it might just not happen. And you just never know. It always comes when they unexpected, but it also comes sometimes when you most expect it, when you're ready and prepared. And he is more prepared for this one than ever before.
I certainly agree with that. I mean, I don't necessarily think I'm not gonna buy into the idea that he'll never win one.
No,
but
co-signing the preparedness.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Based on talking to him before practice started, wrote a story on Bassmaster.com about his practice game plan and kind of how he was gonna manage that. Like a lot of it, everything he said on the record was great. But then we just got to chatting just afterwards, just off the record.
He always is really good about saying phone down and then saying something. And you're like, oh, I'm not supposed to record this.
It just made me very like you can just tell he's just pumped, he's excited, he's prepared, like, but he doesn't seem over the top, if that makes sense. Like he talked about how he's trying to manage his energy between the time of practice starting and the time the tournament starts, just because he knows how important having fish.
Yes.
This will be his ninth classic.
Alter it from being a spazoid to being just calmly confident.
You just got to make it to the starting line, because that's what's so bizarre about this not bizarre, but unique about this tournament. Is like it's exhausting just to get to the starting line. Like in what race, track or whatever, is the build up more exhausting than the actual race? Like, and the classic is kind of like that in a way. So he has put a lot of emphasis on that, and I certainly agree. I think he's just got such a good game plan, and then having you ride out with him yesterday, I think it sets up really well for Zaldain.
And for reference, I always like to ride with someone that's going to be on camera day one of the classic, so that I get information on various parts of the lake, and we're kind of well rounded. If something pops up Saturday, I might have seen it Wednesday, and so yeah, it was very interesting. But so Livesay, along the same lines. I mean, you got him. He's fished here before. He's considered a North Texas guy in some aspects, Central, East Texas, whatever. And he's probably got a lot of experience here as well. Have you talked to him? Was there anything that signified you should pick him, or was this of the two Texas guys in Bucket A, I got to go with him? He's also got a great track record. Like I put him, I didn't put him on my Drain the Lake because I'm saving him for Fork.
Yeah.
But because I've been an idiot in the past, I'm just not trying to be an idiot. But he's had 4 classics in the past. He's fished only 4. This is his 5th, and he's top 15 in all of them. So no matter if it's Hartwell, Grand Lake, Gunnersville, he has been top 15 in the classic, and it just shows how he shows up when the lights are brightest.
Yeah,
and
keep
so
giving yourself a chance. Eventually,
yeah,
you're gonna hit one. Yeah, I think it's a matter of like I think either of those two guys are the clear cut picks in that bucket. Obviously, 32% and 13.2, or no, excuse me, 12.1 with Zaldain.
Yes,
I think those are the local, the safe picks, if you will. That just because they're local never makes it safe. Sometimes it makes the opposite. Like you're almost in worse situation being a local. But I just think all based on all the factors we've already talked about, having talked to other anglers that just like, I mean, they're not necessarily giving them the trophy, but it sounds like some of them are already just assuming one of those two guys is going to win.
No, yeah. With how hard it is to get bites and how hard it was to find spots.
Sure.
You got to go with a guy who's confident in this style of fishing. You go to a lake and you're like, I hope we catch a bunch of fish today and maybe a big one's mixed in. And you come to the classic and you're like, God, I hope I catch 2 giants because I won't have nothing else otherwise. But
if I'm looking at that, just the reason going with Lee is just purely based on like just having talked to him, his confidence, like same reason Zaldain. I think you could pick the exact same rationale for Zaldain as you could Lee Livesay. Obviously, Lee's not as close as Zaldain is proximity to here. But I just think he's in a great spot to have a great tournament. And he's also one of those guys that just specializes in catching big ones. You don't live at Lake Fork and you don't You know,
I
you
think
can't
he
not
won.
figure out how to catch big ones and live at Lake Fork and guide there and do everything he's done there. So, and obviously he's had success here, and like you said, in team tournaments and different things. So,
I think I want to say this the Brandon Belt deal. I want to say I don't know if there's a story online. I swear the Brandon Belt, tournament series that used to be a thing in Texas.
yeah,
I think he won at Ray Roberts, like one of the last times they had a tournament, but I could be wrong. We can go through B and C quicker because we matched. So Stetson Blaylock, my rationale and thought was he's good in Texas. He's great in March, no matter where we are. South Carolina, North Carolina, Arkansas, Texas, great in March. And when you get the vibe that there's not a lot of shoreline cover for these fish, but it's going to be that next stage, that 5 to 10 foot level, I think Stetson's fantastic in that level. And so I feel like he was not the easiest pick in bucket B, but I'm gonna cheat and put on bucket B for you over here. Um, you got a lot of spawn sight fishermen. Um, you got a lot of scopers in this group as well.
Ben Milliken obviously eating up a
Yeah,
massive
Milliken's
percentage.
got a huge percentage. You got the both Drews, you got Fouts in there, Taku. And then so it was really between Blaylock and Lester for me. I saw Matt Airy, and if I had Matt Airy on my team, I love Matt, great angler. The amount of discouragement in his voice yesterday when we saw him on the water, I think his quote on the dog talk was, "I'm just trying not to spin myself out because I'm right there on frustration." So looking at bucket B, that's a scary thing sometimes for anglers. Obviously, you can spin yourself out or the first bass of the classic on Friday and you're unspun. You're like, okay,
Yeah,
we could do this.
yeah,
But I think Blaylock um, and Lester were my two safe guys.
yeah. Bucket B's got plenty of anglers that you could select. I mean, Greg Hackney, Benton, or excuse me, Blaylock, Benton. I mean, you literally go down the entire list. Like you said, Lester, Scott Martin at only 3.8%. Milliken, obviously a big bait guy, big bass specialist type guy. Um, but yeah, Stetson's just so consistent in this time frame of the year. I think one of the biggest keys, and again, it's going to be harder to do this with heavy winds, but you know, one of his biggest specialties in my mind is being adaptable. You know, he is doing one thing and then he shifts to another thing, like that Hartwell Classic that he almost won. I'll never forget that, covering it on the water in the span of like 4 hours. I saw him do four entirely different things. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's cranking a shallow running crankbait on points, catching big spots. He's throwing a wacky worm underneath a dock. 2 seconds later, catching a 6 pounder. Like, he's doing all sorts of different things, which in springtime tournaments, like, things change quickly, very, very quickly. And to be able to adapt like he's shown over the course of his career that he can do. And I also just know, obviously, the lakes he fishes are the same lakes that I grew up fishing.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think there's
It
enough
kind of felt like
similarities.
Washita out
Yeah,
there. It kind
there's
of felt like Washita
there's
out there.
enough similarities from the time we were here a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, that it just makes me think he's in a great spot to have some success. And then we moved to bucket C. We both got Will Davis Jr. You take a look at that bucket. Will Davis, Koya are both over 20% at 23.3 and 22.9 respectfully. Um, they're taking up a massive amount of that percentage. And then Tyler Williams at 12.3. I feel like this is a trickier bucket in a way because you could definitely justify a lot. I mean, basically any of these anglers, of course. But Will Davis just on a
Man,
heater, and I just think he has grown into, like, he's
he's a
grown and
monster.
growing
He's a
into, like,
freaking
yeah,
monster.
one of those guys you put up there near the very, very top of the.
Like, I don't know where he wouldn't catch him.
Yeah, oh, that's what I'm saying.
The
Like,
only
he's
thing I'd
so
say is like
consistent.
maybe the Great Lakes, but like he's caught him there before
Yeah,
enough to
yeah,
justify it. But
so consistent.
yeah, whether he was needing to be proficient with his electronics this week, he's kind of going to be okay. Hear me out on this. Give Will Davis 2 or 3 more years. He will be a spitting image of what we consider Brandon Lester.
I could
I
see that.
think they are the same type of angler
Yeah.
that they're proficient with electronics, but they're great without them, and they're sneaky good everywhere. Like Will Davis is going to be a great one, and he's got his wife's extensions in his hair this week, and they're going to blow in the wind. It is. Have you seen that video?
No, I have not.
You need to go to this from the Night of Champions. A little bit of personality there. I think Will Davis is going to be one to watch. Let's go to D. We differed there. Um, I have Bryan Schmitt. When you think about
You
around the
think that
spawn,
grass is going to play, don't you?
well, I think that I looked at him and I said, "Hey, I heard there's milfoil," and he went, So I said, but I already had him kind of in my mind. Because when you can get bucket D value for Bryan Schmitt, you take it. Um, there's a couple of my no picks in here. I just can't pick them. So that was easy to not have to pick in that. I was wondering about some of the scopers and the way this Lake Fix sets up some of these first time classic qualifiers as well. It was really Bryan Schmitt or Justin Atkins for me. You obviously have Jacob Prosnick, the most seasoned classic angler in this list of guys. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. I feel like if Porosnik won, I wouldn't be shocked because he's a great angler. This just doesn't feel like a Porosnik tournament for some reason. I don't know if I'm thinking ahead of the Pascatank where I expect him to do well, but like I don't know. I didn't feel like a gut check for that. With there being a little bit of grass, with there being fish on isolated cover, it was more isolated cover, whether it's a grass patch, a rock, brush, that screams Bryan Schmitt to me. Making the most of a small group of fish on a piece of structure that yelled Bryan Schmitt. So I'll take it. And I think he was 6%. I didn't care about percentage. I knew he probably wouldn't be an overwhelming pick, just because it's not in his neck of the woods or a place he's done well. Mississippi River, I expect 50%. But Ray Roberts, 6, that's whatever.
And this tournament, technically, he's not going to be able to give his best spots away on the final day.
To Brian,
Yeah, because
could have won
so
that classic, man. That's crazy.
that's good news for Bryan Schmitt. I do like that pick. I could certainly see that working out on a variety of different levels. Again, I have Easton Fothergill here. I just think that second classic. Okay, so you get that out of the way. Obviously, he's
Yes.
already fished one. He knows what to expect.
No
He
nerves,
gets the
and
experience.
he's pissed.
And that's exactly what I was gonna say. He is pissed. I mean, after the way his Elite Series season started, I don't think any of us saw that coming. Especially, it's Florida, and there's plenty of things in Florida that are just funky and weird, and it just kind of happens. But like, Easton has also had success in Florida fishing in the College Series, the Opens last year. It's not like nobody expected that. Let's just
No.
that's the easiest way to put it. I expect Easton Fothergill to catch him big time here. Again, I've talked to him enough to know that he is quietly confident. Most guys in that situation don't want to say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to blast him," because then you don't, and then it's like, well, I'm never going to believe him again. But I don't know. I just think Easton Fothergill is a great pick in bucket D. I'm like you, consider Justin Atkins extremely heavily as well. But I'm going
I will
Easton
say
Fothergill
I'm
in
not
D.
rooting for anybody this week because I we know all these guys' stories, so it's cool to see them all win. I came up to the meeting and shook Justin Atkins' hand and said, "Welcome to the Bassmaster Classic." Took you a little bit longer than I thought it would, but boy, we're glad to have you here because he has been through the fire in his Elite Series career so far, and for him to be able to make the Classic for the first time and it be now, I thought it would be
Sure.
like 2019, 2020, 2021, something like that. Let's go to bucket E. We both picked Connor Jacob. Let's just face it. You got some opens anglers. Um, you've got nation anglers, you've got college anglers, and you've got some first time Elite Series qualifiers for the Classic. I just feel comfortable with Connor Jacob. I felt comfortable with maybe Tyler Campbell as well. And Kyle Austin was someone I consider. Those three guys. I think Kyle Austin's temperament is good for the Classic. I think Connor Jacob, I think he's a scoper supreme. He's probably the best other than Tyler Campbell. Those two are the best scopers in this group. And so if he was to dial that in somewhere or survive, I feel like he could. Um,
I think Connor's super well versed. Now, granted, you're
yeah,
exactly right.
they are, yes, but yes.
He has certainly adapted
If I
to.
see Connor Jacob winning the Classic, I see him doing it
Sure.
scoping. Maybe not jig head minnow, but scoping.
I think he has adapted to it well, and I think we all have people we fish with or know that are like this. Like some of my fishing partners I grew up fishing with, are like this now. Like before, they were very traditional, shallow power fishermen, like 20-pound fluoro on everything, like that style of fishing, that have adapted to the more finesse approach when needed. And to me, I feel like that's what Connor Jacob is. I have covered him a number of times through the college series. Every single time was not finesse fishing. It was not using live scope
Well, that's
or
good
fishing
then.
sonar.
Maybe he'll win on a big jig with his eyes closed, and I'll feel good.
But he certainly is super, super versatile, and I'm just excited to see him in the classic because, like I said earlier, I think it was just a matter of time before it happened, and yeah, he's here now.
Let's go to Falcon Ridge Drain the Lake. There's our bucket A through E. We'll do the quick run through. I had
Chris
Chris
Zaldain.
Zaldain, Stetson Blaylock, Will Davis Jr., Bryan Schmitt, and Connor Jacob.
I've got Lee Livesay, Stetson Blaylock, Will Davis Jr., Easton Fothergill, and Connor Jacob as well.